The fluorescent lights in Sector 7 don't hum like normal lights should. They pulse. A slow, deliberate rhythm that matches no electrical frequency known to man. Marcus Chen noticed this on his first night at the Amazon Fulfillment Center outside of Reno, Nevada, but what he couldn't ignore was the smell that accompanied each pulse, a sweet, rotting odor that seemed to seep from the concrete itself. It was 2:47 a.m. when he found the list. Not the standard safety protocols they'd shown him during orientation. Not the typical warehouse procedures. This was different. Printed on yellowed paper, laminated with tape so old it had begun to peel at the corners, tucked inside his locker underneath a pile of dust and what looked disturbingly like fingernail clippings. Night shift rules, Sector 7 do not deviate. Your life depends on it. Marcus's hands trembled as he read the first rule. If you hear your name called over the intercom after 3 a.m., do not respond. It is not management. It is never management. The intercom crackled to life above his head. Static. Then silence. Then his name, spoken in a voice that sounded almost, but not quite, human. Marcus Chen, please report to the sorting floor. He didn't move. He couldn't. Because the voice speaking his name was his own. Welcome back to Dark Shift Stories, where we explore the horrifying realities lurking in the places we work. Tonight's story comes from Nevada, and I need to know, are you watching this alone? Are you watching this at night? Drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from, because after you hear what happened to Marcus, you might want to turn on every light in your house. If this story gives you chills, smash that like button, subscribe for more true horror, and let's dive into the nightmare that is Sector 7. 3 weeks earlier, Marcus had been desperate. The kind of desperate that makes you take any job, ask no questions, and ignore the red flags flapping violently in your face. His previous warehouse job had laid off half the staff, his rent was 2 months overdue, and his daughter's medication wasn't getting any cheaper. When the recruitment email came through, immediate hire, night shift, $28 per hour plus benefits, he'd applied before finishing his coffee. The Reno facility was massive, one of Amazon's largest distribution centers west of the Mississippi. During the day, it bustled with thousands of workers, hundreds of trucks, the constant beep and whir of automation. But the night shift was different. Skeleton crew. Just 12 people spread across a building the size of 28 football fields. Marcus had been assigned to Sector 7, the oldest part of the warehouse. It had been built in 1987, back when the building had served as a military supply depot during the tail end of the Cold War. The company had renovated most of it, but Sector 7 retained its original concrete walls, low ceilings, and a persistent dampness that no amount of industrial dehumidifiers could eliminate. His supervisor, a gaunt woman named Rebecca Torres, had given him a tour on his first day. She'd been working nights for 11 years, she said, and had a way of not quite meeting his eyes when she spoke. Sector 7 is pretty straightforward, she'd explained, her voice flat and rehearsed. You'll be picking and packing. The system tells you where to go, what to grab. Don't overthink it. Don't wander. And definitely don't go into the restricted aisles. Which aisles are restricted? Marcus had asked. Rebecca had paused for just a moment too long. The ones marked with red tape. You'll know them when you see them. But she hadn't mentioned the smell. She hadn't mentioned the lights. And she definitely hadn't mentioned the rules. The other workers on the night shift kept to themselves with an almost religious fervor. There was Dimitri, a former construction worker who never spoke and always wore headphones, even though they weren't allowed. There was Keisha, who'd been there for 3 years and had a facial tic that seemed to worsen the closer she got to Sector 7. There was Old Man Jenkins, who everyone just called Jenkins, and who had a habit of freezing mid-step, staring at nothing, before continuing on as if his brain had simply buffered for a moment. Marcus had tried to be friendly. "Hey, how's it going?" he'd say. They'd nod. Sometimes grunt. but never engage. It was as if they'd all signed an invisible contract of silence. The break room was the only place that felt relatively normal. Fluorescent lights that actually hummed properly, vending machines that worked, tables and chairs that didn't look like they'd been dragged from an abandoned asylum. But even there, conversation was minimal. People ate quickly, eyes down, and returned to their stations as soon as their 30 minutes were up. Marcus noticed other small oddities. The security cameras in Sector 7 pointed at strange angles, focusing on empty corners rather than the main aisles. There were doors marked "Authorized Personnel Only" that he never saw anyone enter or exit. And there was a persistent sound, almost subliminal, like distant machinery running somewhere deep beneath the floor, a rhythmic grinding that he felt more than heard. On his third night, he'd asked Rebecca about the turnover rate. "People don't usually last long on night shift," she'd said simply. "Why not? They find better opportunities." The way she said it sounded like she was reading from a script. "What about you? 11 years is a long time." Rebecca had looked at him then, really looked at him, and for just a moment, he'd seen something in her eyes. Fear. Deep, bone-tired fear. "I follow the rules, Marcus. You should too." That should have been his cue to quit. But desperation is a powerful motivator, and the money was too good to walk away from. So he'd shown up for his fourth shift, clocked in at 10 p.m., and headed to his locker to grab his scanner. That's when he found the list. The paper felt wrong in his hands. Too thick, almost like parchment. The text was typed in an old courier font, the kind that could only come from a typewriter or someone going through great effort to make it look that way. There were 9 rules in total, each more bizarre than the last. Night shift rules, Sector 7. 1. If you hear your name called over the intercom after 3 a.m., do not respond. It is not management. It is never management. 2. The red-taped aisles, A7, A13, A19, are off-limits. Do not enter them. Do not look down them for more than 3 seconds. Do not acknowledge anything you see there. 3. If your scanner directs you to bin location 000-000-000, immediately return to the break room and wait until 4 a.m. before resuming work. 4. The bathroom in the northeast corner is not to be used between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. Use the facilities in the main building if necessary. 5. If you see a figure in an orange vest that doesn't cast a shadow, do not speak to it. Do not follow it. Pretend you do not see it. 6. When the lights pulse in sets of 3, stop moving immediately. Stand completely still until they return to normal. Do not close your eyes. 7. Never work alone in aisle A22. Always maintain visual contact with at least one other worker. 8. If you hear children laughing, leave Sector 7 immediately and do not return until the next shift. 9. At exactly 3:33 a.m., you will hear a loud mechanical grinding from beneath the floor. This is normal. Do not investigate. Do not go downstairs. Marcus had read the list 3 times, waiting for the punchline. Some kind of elaborate hazing for the new guy. But the paper was too old, too worn. The tape was brittle with age. This had been in his locker for years, maybe decades, waiting. He'd looked around the locker room. Empty. Just the distant sound of forklifts and conveyor belts from the main warehouse. He'd folded the list carefully and put it in his pocket, then headed to the floor. Sector 7 was already in full operation. Keisha was working aisle A3, her scanner beeping rhythmically. Dimitri was somewhere in the back. Jenkins stood at his station near the packing area, moving boxes with the mechanical precision of a man who'd done this 10,000 times before. Marcus's scanner beeped to life, directing him to aisle A8. He grabbed his cart and started walking. The aisles in Sector 7 were different from the rest of the warehouse. Taller. Darker. The shelving unit stretched up 20 feet, crammed with boxes of varying sizes, most covered in dust despite the warehouse's supposed climate control. The floor was concrete, stained with what Marcus hoped was just oil and rust, but something about the dark patches made his stomach turn. He found the item he needed, a box of industrial drill bits, and scanned it. His device beeped, then directed him to another location. Aisle A12. As he approached, he noticed the red tape on the ground. A thick stripe running across the entrance to aisle A13, right next to where he needed to go. He glanced down the forbidden aisle without thinking. For exactly 4 seconds, he looked. The aisle seemed to stretch impossibly long, far longer than the building should allow. The lights at the far end flickered in a pattern that made his eyes hurt. And there, perhaps 50 feet down, stood a figure in an orange vest. Its back was to Marcus. It wasn't moving. Just standing there, perfectly still, facing the wall. Marcus felt his heart rate spike. He looked away quickly, remembering the rule, do not look down them for more than 3 seconds. He'd already broken the first rule. Quickly, he grabbed the item from A12 and returned to his cart. His hands were shaking. When he glanced back toward A13, the figure was gone. Don't look at the red aisles. Marcus jumped. Rebecca stood behind him, her face expressionless. I know what you were doing, she interrupted. Did you find the list? He nodded slowly. Good. Follow it. Exactly. She leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. The people who don't follow the rules don't last, Marcus. And I don't mean they quit. What do you mean? But Rebecca was already walking away, her footsteps echoing in the vast space. The rest of the shift until 3 a.m. passed in a blur of scanning and packing. Marcus kept the list in his pocket, pulling it out to reread every few minutes. The rules seemed insane. Impossible. But Rebecca's warning echoed in his mind. At 2:58 a.m., he was in aisle A16 when his scanner directed him to a new location. The screen flickered. Then displayed, bin, 000-000-000. Marcus's blood ran cold. Rule number 3. He stared at the screen, hoping it would change. It didn't. The device beeped insistently, demanding he go to the impossible location. Following the rules, he powered off his scanner, abandoned his cart, and walked quickly toward the break room. Behind him, he heard a sound, like something heavy being dragged across concrete. He didn't look back. The break room was empty. The clock on the wall read 3:01 a.m. He had to wait until 4 a.m. Marcus sat down, his heart pounding. The fluorescent lights hummed their normal, comforting hum. He could hear the distant sounds of the warehouse, but they seemed muffled, far away. At 3:07 a.m., the intercom crackled to life. Marcus. Chen, please report to the sorting floor. The voice was his own. Exactly his own. Every inflection, every slight rasp from years of smoking in college, every subtle characteristic that made his voice uniquely his. He remembered rule number 1, if you hear your name called over the intercom after 3 a.m., do not respond. Marcus stayed perfectly still, his hands gripping the edge of the table. The intercom continued. Marcus, we know, you can hear us, please, come to the sorting floor, we have something to show you. The voice began to change. Subtle at first. A slight deepening of tone, a wetness to the words that didn't belong. Then more dramatic, becoming layered, as if multiple versions of his voice were speaking simultaneously, slightly out of sync. Marcus, your daughter, she called, she needs you, please come, she's waiting, in the sorting floor. His blood turned to ice. Emily. His daughter. How did they, know about Emily? The voice laughed. His laugh, but wrong. too many teeth in it. Then silence. The intercom clicked off. Marcus checked his phone. No missed calls. No messages. Emily was home, asleep, with his ex-wife. She was fine. She had to be fine. The clock read 3:15 a.m. 45 minutes to go. The minutes crawled by with agonizing slowness. Marcus sat in the break room, every nerve in his body screaming at him to run, to leave, to get out of this nightmare. But he needed this job. He needed the money. At 3:33 a.m., exactly as the list predicted, a sound erupted from beneath the floor. It started as a low rumble, like distant thunder. Then it grew, becoming a mechanical grinding so loud that Marcus's teeth rattled. The floor vibrated. The vending machines shook. A can of soda fell out and rolled across the floor. The sound was coming from directly beneath the break room. Something massive, something powerful, churning and grinding with a rhythm that sounded almost deliberate. Almost purposeful. Marcus remembered rule number 9, this is normal. Do not investigate. But how was this normal? What kind of machinery could make that sound? And why was it running in a warehouse? The grinding continued for exactly 3 minutes, then stopped as abruptly as it had begun. Silence flooded back in, oppressive and thick. At 4 a.m., Marcus's scanner buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out. The screen now showed a normal location, aisle A9. The mysterious 000-000-000 was gone. He returned to work, his legs unsteady. The rest of the shift, he was hyper-aware of everything. He avoided looking at the red-taped aisles. When his route took him near A22, he made sure to stay within sight of Dmitri, following rule number 7. When the lights pulsed in sets of 3 around 5 a.m., he stopped moving immediately and stood perfectly still, his heart hammering, until they returned to their normal rhythm. At 6 a.m., the day shift began filtering in. The sun rose. The warehouse transformed into something normal, mundane, just another distribution center. Marcus clocked out, exhausted and rattled, and drove home in a daze. He slept poorly, haunted by dreams of orange-vested figures and voices that sounded like his own. When he woke up at 4 p.m., he seriously considered not going back. But the money. Always the money. That night, he returned for his shift. Clocked in. Headed to Sector 7. Rebecca pulled him aside before he started. You followed the rules last night? Yes. Good. Keep it up. After a while, it becomes second nature. You stop questioning. What happens if someone breaks the rules? Rebecca's face darkened. 3 months ago, we had a guy named David. New hire. Big guy, ex-Marine, didn't scare easy. He thought the rules were bullshit. Some kind of corporate mind game. She paused. On his 5th night, around 2 a.m., he decided to walk down aisle A13. What happened? He came back. Rebecca's voice was barely a whisper. But he was different. He wouldn't stop screaming. Not loud screaming. Quiet screaming. Like his vocal cords were shredded, but he couldn't stop trying. Security had to restrain him. They took him away in an ambulance. She looked directly at Marcus. He hasn't stopped screaming. I visited him once. He's in a facility now. Sedated most of the time. When he's awake, he just screams and claws at his face. Marcus felt sick. What's down that aisle? He managed to ask. I don't know. I've never looked for more than 3 seconds. Rebecca turned to leave, then stopped. One more thing. Tonight's Thursday. So. Thursday nights are worse. I don't know why, but they are. Be extra careful. The shift started normally. Marcus worked methodically, keeping the rules fresh in his mind. He saw Keisha in the distance, her facial tic more pronounced tonight. Jenkins was at his usual station, but Marcus noticed the old man seemed even more vacant than usual, moving like an automaton. At 1:17 a.m., Marcus needed to use the bathroom. He started walking toward the northeast corner before remembering rule number 4, the bathroom in the northeast corner is not to be used between 1 a.m. and 5 a.m. He changed direction, heading toward the main building's facilities. As he walked past the restricted bathroom, he heard water running inside. Then, unmistakably, someone or something, humming. A child's voice, humming a nursery rhyme. Marcus walked faster. When he returned to Sector 7, the atmosphere had changed. The air felt thicker, harder to breathe. The smell was worse tonight, that sweet, rotting odor mixed with something else. Ozone, maybe. Or burning hair. At 2:30 a.m., he was working aisle A17 when he saw it. A figure in an orange vest, walking slowly down the parallel aisle. Marcus could see it through the gaps in the shelving. It moved strangely, too smoothly, like it was gliding rather than walking. He remembered rule number 5, if you see a figure in an orange vest that doesn't cast a shadow, do not speak to it. Marcus looked down at the floor, searching for the shadow. The warehouse lights were bright. Everything cast a shadow. Except this figure. Where the shadow should have been, there was nothing. Just floor, as if the figure didn't exist in three-dimensional space. Marcus's instinct was to call out, to ask if they needed help. He bit down on his tongue, hard enough to taste blood. The figure continued gliding past, and for a moment, its head turned toward him. He caught a glimpse of its face. It was smooth. Featureless. No eyes, no nose, no mouth. Just a blank expanse of flesh-colored material stretched over where a face should be. Marcus turned away, focusing on his scanner, his hands trembling so badly he could barely hold it. When he looked back, the figure was gone. At 3 a.m., he heard laughter. Children's laughter. High-pitched, gleeful, echoing through Sector 7 from no identifiable source. It bounced off the concrete walls, seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. Rule number 8, if you hear children laughing, leave Sector 7 immediately. Marcus abandoned his cart and ran. He didn't care how it looked. He sprinted toward the exit, his footsteps echoing. Behind him, the laughter grew louder, closer, as if it was chasing him. He burst through the doors into the main warehouse. The day shift prep area. Bright lights. Normal people starting their pre-shift routines. The laughter stopped instantly. Marcus stood there, gasping, drawing stares from the early arrivals. He checked his watch. 3:04 a.m. He couldn't return to Sector 7 until the next shift. Rule number 8 was clear. He found Rebecca in the supervisor's office. I heard it, he said. The children. She nodded. Go home, Marcus. Clock out early. I'll mark it as a safety issue. You still get paid. What the hell is happening in there? Rebecca closed her office door. What do you know about the history of this building? It was a military depot. Before that. She pulled out a folder from her desk, old and water-stained. In 1952, this was something else. A government research facility. Classified. They were working on. I don't know exactly. The documents are redacted. But it involved children. Orphans, mostly. Experiments in sensory deprivation and psychological conditioning. Marcus felt cold. There was an accident in 1955. Or maybe it wasn't an accident. Again, the records are unclear. But 12 children died. The government shut it down, classified everything, and the building sat empty for 30 years before they converted it to a supply depot. Rebecca looked tired, ancient. When Amazon bought the building in 2019, they found things during the renovation. Things sealed in the walls. Things buried in the foundation. Things that probably should have stayed buried. Why doesn't the company shut down Sector 7? They've tried. 3 times. But every time they move operations out, productivity drops by 40% across the entire facility. It's like Sector 7 is the heart of the building. If it stops, everything stops. She laughed bitterly. Besides, the night shift gets the work done. As long as we follow the rules, packages get shipped, quotas get met. Management doesn't ask questions. People have died, haven't they? Rebecca didn't answer, which was answer enough. Marcus took 2 days off, claiming illness. He spent the time researching, digging through old newspaper archives and declassified documents. What he found made him wish he'd stayed ignorant. The facility had been called Project Chrysalis. The government's goal had been to create enhanced soldiers through early childhood conditioning and sensory manipulation. They'd used orphans, children with no families to ask questions. The experiments had been brutal: isolation chambers, subliminal programming, experimental drugs. On March 17, 1955, something went wrong. The reports were vague, but witnesses described mass hysteria, unexplained phenomena, and psychological contamination. 12 children died. 3 researchers committed suicide within a week. The project was terminated, the building sealed. But the children, what happened to their bodies? The records didn't say. When Marcus returned for his next shift, he was determined to quit after tonight. One more night for the paycheck, then he was done. The warehouse felt wrong from the moment he clocked in. The air was oppressive, thick with that rotting sweet smell. All the night shift workers looked haggard, like they hadn't slept in days. Even Rebecca seemed more withdrawn, her eyes darting nervously. "Bad night," she muttered when she saw him. "Can feel it. Stay sharp." Marcus started his shift at 10 p.m. For the first few hours, everything seemed normal. He picked and packed, avoided the restricted areas, followed every rule to the letter. At 1 a.m., his scanner directed him to aisle A22. Rule number 7, never work alone in aisle A22. Always maintain visual contact with at least one other worker. Marcus looked around. The sector was unusually empty tonight. He couldn't see Dimitri or Keisha or Jenkins. He radioed Rebecca. "I need someone to work A22 with me." Static. Then her voice, strained. "Everyone's tied up. Can you wait 30 minutes? The scanner's giving me priority items." A long pause. "Be careful. Don't go too deep into the aisle." Marcus approached A22 slowly. The aisle was darker than the others, several overhead lights were out. He could see about 15 feet before the shadows became too thick. He grabbed the first item quickly, his eyes constantly scanning for movement. As he reached for the second item, he heard breathing. Not his own breathing. Someone. Something else. Deep, wet breaths coming from further down the aisle, in the darkness. Marcus froze. The breathing continued, steady and rhythmic. Then footsteps. Slow. Heavy. Coming closer. He should have run. Rule number 7 was clear. But he was paralyzed, watching the darkness, waiting to see what emerged. A hand appeared first. Small. Child-sized. Then an arm. Then a face. A little girl, maybe 8 years old, wearing a hospital gown that looked decades old. Her skin was gray, her eyes were black. Not just the iris, but the entire eye, like someone had filled them with ink. She smiled at Marcus with too many teeth. "Are you here to play?" she asked, her voice hollow and echoing. Marcus stumbled backward, knocking over his cart. The little girl stepped forward, and behind her, more children emerged from the darkness. 6, 7, 8 of them. All wearing hospital gowns. All with those black, bottomless eyes. "We've been waiting," one of them said. "We're lonely," said another. "Play with us," they said in unison. Marcus ran. He abandoned all protocol, all pretense of following procedures, and ran like his life depended on it, because it did. Behind him, the children laughed. That same high-pitched laughter from before, but now he could hear the wrongness in it, the inhuman quality that made his skin crawl. He didn't stop running until he reached the break room. He slammed the door and locked it, gasping for air. Through the small window, he could see the children standing in the hallway, just standing there, watching him with their black eyes. Then, slowly, they turned and walked away, disappearing back into Sector 7. Marcus's radio crackled. Rebecca's voice, "Marcus, what's your location?" "Break room." I saw them. "The children." "Stay there. Don't move. I'm coming to you." While he waited, Marcus noticed something strange. On the wall of the break room, behind a motivational poster about workplace safety, there was a door. A small door, about 3 feet high. He'd never noticed it before. It had no handle, no obvious way to open it. But as he stared at it, he heard that sound again, the mechanical grinding from beneath the floor. 3:33 a.m. The grinding grew louder, more intense than before. The entire break room shook. The small door began to rattle in its frame. And then it opened. Just a crack at first. Then wider. Darkness beyond, absolute and complete. And from that darkness came a smell that made the rotting sweet odor seem pleasant, the stench of decay and chemicals and something indescribably wrong. Something moved in the darkness. Something large. Marcus backed against the far wall as a figure emerged from the small door, impossibly, because the door was too small, but it emerged anyway, unfolding itself in ways that violated geometry and reason. It wore a white coat, stained with old blood and other fluids. Its face was human, but stretched, elongated, like it had been pulled on a rack. Its eyes were the same black as the children's. "Subject 7C, it said in a voice like grinding glass. "You're not authorized for this sector." I work here," Marcus stammered. The thing that had once been a researcher tilted its head at an impossible angle. "This sector is for the children. Always for the children. But they're hungry. They need new playmates." It reached for Marcus with fingers that were too long, too many joints, ending in yellowed nails like claws. The break room door burst open. Rebecca stood there, holding something Marcus couldn't quite see, a symbol. A talisman. She was chanting something in a language he didn't recognize. The researcher thing recoiled, hissing. It scrambled backward into the small door, which slammed shut with a sound like a gunshot. Rebecca grabbed Marcus's arm. "We need to go. Now." She dragged him out of the break room, through Sector 7. Marcus caught glimpses as they ran, the red-taped aisles glowing with an otherworldly light, the shadowless figures multiplying, filling the sector. The children standing in formation, watching them flee with those terrible black eyes. They burst through the sector doors into the main warehouse. The normal world. The safe world. Rebecca released his arm, breathing heavily. "You're done. You can't come back." "What was that thing?" "Dar. Cornelius Harrow. Lead researcher on Project Chrysalis. He was one of the 3 who committed suicide. Hanged himself in his office." Rebecca laughed bitterly. Apparently, death didn't take. The children are still here. Still suffering. Still angry. The experiments trapped them in this place, and when they died, their spirits couldn't leave. This building is their cage and their kingdom. She looked at Marcus with eyes full of sorrow and exhaustion. The rules keep them contained. Keep them from spreading beyond Sector 7. But Thursday nights, when the barrier is weakest, they try to expand. They try to take new subjects. Why do you stay? Why keep working here? Rebecca pulled up her sleeve, revealing her wrist. Carved into her skin, old and scarred, was a symbol, the same one Marcus had glimpsed her holding in the break room. I can't leave, she said simply. I tried, years ago. But I looked too long down aisle A13. I saw too much. Part of me is theirs now. If I leave, they'll come for me. Here, as long as I follow the rules, I'm protected. She pulled her sleeve down. Go home, Marcus. Tomorrow, you'll receive a severance email. Benefits package. Enough to cover 2 months of rent. Don't come back. Marcus drove home in shock. He arrived just as the sun was rising, the normal world going about its normal business, completely unaware of the nightmare that existed just outside the city. He showered, trying to wash away the smell. That sweet, rotting smell that seemed to have embedded itself in his skin. He couldn't. Even days later, he'd catch whiffs of it. The severance email arrived as Rebecca promised. He accepted it without question. He found a new job within a week, lower pay, but day shift, in a building with no history, no secrets, no rules written on yellowed paper. But he couldn't stop thinking about Rebecca. About the other night shift workers. About the children trapped in that place, suffering for eternity because of experiments conducted 70 years ago. He tried to report it. Called the local news, the police, even the FBI. But every time he mentioned the Amazon warehouse, the specific building, people dismissed him. Some laughed. One detective told him there were no records of any government facility at that location. The building's history had been erased. Classified. Buried. Just like the children. A month after he left, Marcus drove past the warehouse. It was running at full capacity, trucks coming and going, day shift workers streaming in and out. Everything normal. Everything fine. Except Sector 7. Even from the parking lot, even in broad daylight, he could see it, a darkness that clung to that section of the building. A shadow that didn't match the sun's angle. He noticed something else, too. A new hiring banner hung across the entrance, immediate hire, night shift, Sector 7. $28 per hour plus benefits. They were already looking for his replacement. 3 months later, Marcus's daughter Emily came to stay with him for the weekend. She was doing better, new medication working well, her spirits high. They ordered pizza, watched movies, enjoyed the simple normalcy of being together. On Sunday morning, Emily asked if she could use Marcus's laptop for homework. Sure, sweetie. It's on the table. While she worked, Marcus made breakfast. He was flipping pancakes when Emily called out, "Dad. You got a weird email. Delete it if it's spam. It's from Amazon. But it's addressed to me." Marcus's blood ran cold. He rushed to the laptop. The email was simple. To Emily Chen from sector_7_management at amazon.com. Subject, immediate employment opportunity. Dear Emily. We noticed your father is no longer with us. We're sorry to see him go. However, we believe you would be an excellent fit for our organization. Your unique circumstances, medical history attached, make you particularly suitable for our needs. We have openings for our youth training program. Starting age, 12 and up. Please consider joining our family. We'll be waiting. The children of Sector 7. Attached to the email was a video file. Against his better judgment, Marcus clicked it. The video showed the interior of Sector 7. The camera moved down aisle A13, past the red tape, into the depths he'd never seen. At the end of the aisle stood the 12 children, arranged in a semicircle, their black eyes staring into the camera. In the center stood Emily. Not the Emily sitting at the table behind him, but Emily, exactly as she looked now, wearing the same clothes she was wearing right this moment, standing with the children, her eyes slowly filling with black ink. She smiled at the camera, her smile, but wrong, and waved. The Emily standing with the children mouthed something. Marcus leaned closer to the screen, trying to read her lips. "I'm already here, Daddy." Marcus spun around. Emily, his Emily, sat at the table, staring at him with perfectly normal eyes. She looked concerned. "Dad? You okay? You look like you saw a ghost." He checked her eyes. Brown. Normal. She was fine. She was real. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just a weird spam email." But as he reached to close the laptop, he noticed something in the corner of the screen. In the video, just behind the children, stood a figure in an orange vest. It had no shadow. And it was holding a paper. Marcus squinted, trying to make out the text. Nightshift rules, Sector 7. Rule number 10. They can reach beyond the warehouse. If they know your name. If they know who you love. No one is safe. The video ended. The file deleted itself. Marcus grabbed Emily, pulling her close. "We're leaving. Pack your things. We're going to your mother's." "Dad, what?" "Now, Emily." As they rushed to gather her belongings, Marcus's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "See you soon, Marcus. We always get our family back. Rebecca." Below the text was an image. It showed Marcus's locker at his new job, his current workplace. Inside the locker, placed carefully on top of his jacket, was a familiar piece of yellowed paper. He zoomed in on the image, his hands shaking. Nightshift rules, Sector 7. Addendum for those who leave. You didn't really think you could escape, did you? You've seen too much. You know too much. You're one of us now. Sweet dreams, Marcus. We'll see you at 3:33 a.m. That night, lying in bed in a hotel room 3 cities away, Marcus heard it. At exactly 3:33 a.m., the mechanical grinding started beneath the floor. And in the corner of the dark room, a small door that hadn't been there before began to slowly creak open.